Hey everyone, I'm HokiHoshi and I've got a bit of a quick video for you today, but I wanted to rush this one out because it's sort of time sensitive. I was actually sitting down to record a car review, but I had seen someone post on the Forza subreddit about this car, and I figured I'd check it out quick, and I was immediately amazed at the performance of this car, and it is the reward for this week's weekly championship, so I wanted to make sure I kind of got a PSA out there for you guys to definitely go try to get this car, because this is definitely a competitor, if not an outright better car than the McLaren 720S pre-order edition. If you look at or follow the Speed Zone leaderboards, this thing is just taking over. And the car I'm talking about is the one you see on screen here, the Mosler MT900S. So like I said, this car is the reward for the seasonal championship this week, and at the time of recording there are only about 4.5 days left to get the car. Obviously you can't hunt the auction house for it, but I definitely think, even though you do have to do a co-op championship, so it's a bit of a gamble, it's still easier going this route versus hunting the auction house, because people aren't going to have multiples of this car. So I definitely recommend giving this a shot. It's 3 road course S2 races. You have to beat the unbeatable Drivatars. I actually did it in an Aventador J, which was not the best car, but it was still able to beat the Drivatars. But I would recommend, if you have a good tune for a Senna or the 720S, definitely hop in that. The GTR LM is another pretty good option too. So as far as the Mosler goes, I've been using this car exclusively for speed zones, and it is unbelievably fast. With the pre-order McLaren, I was definitely able to get in the top 100s. I did hold a world record for a little while, and I had some scores in the high, maybe 30s or 20s. But with this car, I am currently holding 3 world records. You can see pretty much all my scores are top 15 or top 10. Now, the car has only been out, 3 or 4 days at the time of recording this, so these scores are obviously going to drop as more people kind of figure out that the Mosler is a better car than the pre-order 720S. And if you're a bit of a leaderboard hunter for the speed zones like I am, this is definitely the new meta car, if you will. So let's get into the juicy bits. We're going to talk about mods and tuning, because I'm really happy with what Forza has done with this car. So I do have a tune available for the car. You can find it at HokiHoshi's Creative Hub. It's called Speed Zone V2. But I think it's important to show you guys all the numbers and the information so that you guys can build the tune yourself, and then maybe make an even faster tune by building off of it. So let's start by talking about the mods here. Starting with the engine mods, I will say I'm using the Racing V8, but we'll talk about engine swaps in a second here. For now, everything I have is maxed out, with the notable exception of the intercooler, which I have left stock. And the reason for that is it does definitely add power, but it also adds weight. And I found that kind of my happy balance was leaving this stock, sacrificing a little bit of power for a little bit less weight. It definitely made a noticeable improvement in the handling of the car, and I felt like the sacrifice in power wasn't enough to justify adding that power back. But again, you guys can make your own decisions on that one. Definitely feel it out for yourselves. So talking about the handling upgrades, I have the brakes maxed out, and I have the suspension stock right now. But you'll notice that if you switch to rally suspension, you get like a tiny bit of weight savings. So I think I might kind of mess with that, try to match the same suspension values on the rally suspension to just get that tiny little extra bit of improvement, but obviously it's not even 1 pound, so you're barely going to notice a difference from that. For the chassis reinforcement, I've left it stock again. I don't really think you gain much from adding the roll cage except for 40 pounds, so definitely go with max weight reduction like I have there. I don't see any reason not to do that one. For the drivetrain, everything here is maxed out. It is rear-wheel drive, just keep that in mind. For the tires, I've gone with the stock, which is just a race equivalent. Yeah, I think they're the exact same as race tires. And I've gone with the maximum track width for both front and rear. For rims, I've gone with some of the lightest possible wheels. There's kind of just different classes. Yeah, you can see those ones are 26 pounds heavier. So just pick a light wheel for that one. This one, there is definitely going to be just some debate about. I've gone with the bigger rims, which do add, I think, 4 or 5 pounds in total. But 5 pounds isn't too much, and you definitely benefit from a more responsive and I think better handling car in total. Now for the track width, and I'm just realizing I said track width for the wheel width, but for the track width and the wheel width, max both of those out. Now let's talk about the conversions. So starting with the easiest one, and definitely the one I'm most happy about, keep this car rear wheel drive. It is meant for rear wheel drive layout. If you switch it to all wheel drive, obviously you get some of the benefits from that, like a better launch, but it really hampers the handling ability of the car, and I don't really see that many situations where all-wheel drive would be better than a rear-wheel drive layout. Again, this makes me super happy because all-wheel drive, as you guys I'm sure know, has always kind of been the meta, so it's nice to see a rear-wheel drive car get its time in the spotlight. So talking about the aspiration, I've gone with the twin turbos here over the supercharger. Because you get a higher top end. You can see with the supercharger your torque curve is a little bit more linear, but you sacrifice a little bit of the top end and you miss out on all the cool turbo noises. So let's talk about engine swaps now. This one's the most interesting to me because there's still a debate over what engine is the best for speed zones, and I love having that kind of debate between, people in one camp saying, oh, this engine is the best for X and Y, versus other people in another camp saying this is the best. And I just love having that competition and that sort of uncertainty about what really is the best engine swap. So like I said, I'm using the Racing V8, which kind of sits at the middle between the two extremes, being the Racing V12, which is a lot lighter but sacrifices power, or the standard V12, which I think can get up to 1500 plus horsepower, but is the most heavy, weighing about 500 pounds more than the Racing V12. So most of what I've been seeing is people that do speed zones using the Racing V12 because it's so light and the handling is just unmatched. But the Mosler is also a very good top speed car, and the standard, I think it's a 6.5 liter V12, is amazing for top speed runs. Personally though, I found that the Racing V8 with the stock intercooler kind of hits that happy medium between the two. So now that we've talked about mods, let's dive into the tuning. Starting with the tires, I feel like there's a bit more fine adjustment I can make here, but I've gone with my pretty standard just under stock for the front. And for the rear PSI, I usually go a bit lower, but this car took really well to a higher rear PSI. I recommend playing with this one a bit though if you dive into the tuning. So let's talk about gearing. This I have definitely played with for quite a bit to make sure I'm not getting any gear shifts right towards the end of the speed zones. But it's worth noting that this isn't necessarily a road course gearing tune. So first is basically just a throwaway gear. The car is rear wheel drive and makes too much power. Second, you can get some grip as long as you have good throttle control. But third through sixth is really where you're going to be in the speed zones. So if you want to copy down these numbers, definitely go ahead, and keep in mind that adjustments of literally just 1 or 2 notches can make a very noticeable difference in your power band. For the alignment, I feel like I've got this one pretty well locked in. The front camber definitely took to a higher value than it usually does for me. I usually run maybe 1.3. And this took to both a higher caster and a higher front camber than I usually run. The rear, pretty standard though, I usually run about 0.8, 0.9. And the toe also took to a higher value. I usually don't run over 0.3, but this car really seemed to take well to a higher front toe out value. The rear toe, however, I left stock. I'll sometimes run a little bit of toe in for stability, but that kind of sacrificed the handling for this car, so I left that one at 0. The anti-roll bars are definitely one you might want to play with because although I usually do run pretty soft anti-roll bars like you're seeing here, the car definitely benefits in terms of handling ease if you run stiffer anti-roll bars. Softer is going to be faster and more grippy if you can handle it and manage the car kind of jumping around a little bit more. But stiffer is a lot more stable. The spring rates are a pretty similar situation. I would recommend keeping a similar ratio of a softer front and stiffer rear, but if you're having some trouble handling the car or you just want to make a more reliable road tune, definitely go with some stiffer suspension settings. And you might also benefit from bumping up the ride height just a notch or two. Now for damping, I usually spend a lot more time with fine-tuning the damping, as I feel it usually makes a pretty strong effect on the car's handling, especially for like road course tunes. But I kind of did my formula, made some small adjustments, and ended up here, which I think is pretty much perfect as far as driving goes. I might play with it a little bit more just to see if I can get just a little bit more performance out of it, but I feel like this is a pretty solid set here for the damping settings. Now, as far as aero goes, this definitely plays a big role in the car's handling, and you'll notice that I'm not using maxed out rear aero because too much rear aero downforce can induce some understeer, especially at higher speeds. So this is another one you're going to want to play with. These values here have been great for me for high speed zones, but a track setup might be a little bit different. You might actually want a little bit less downforce all around. I've left the brake tuning untouched here because I usually play with ABS on, which kind of neuters the effectiveness of this tuning window, but if you play with ABS off, you'll have a better feel of how good your brake management is, and if you need to adjust the pressure up and down. So finally, for the differential, this was another one that went kind of against what I usually tune for. I usually end up with a much lower diff setting, especially in a rear-wheel drive car, because I find that for a track setup, lower setting allows for a little more oversteer, although that's a bit counterintuitive. I found that to be kind of general practice all the way around, except for this car, definitely taking to a higher both acceleration and decel setting, which gave me a nice locked-in oversteer for most of the cornering. And that just about does it for tuning on the Mosler. So I really hope you guys can grab this car and get a chance to try it out. This is, again, kind of not one of my usual videos, but I really wanted to make a video on this because if I missed out on this car this week, I would have been really upset just kind of hunting the auction house trying to get one. So I'm glad I was able to jump on it when I did, and I hope you guys can do the same. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and definitely give this car a shot. A little bit of a channel update quick. I had talked earlier about kind of a big video coming and starting 2 videos a week soon, but I totally forgot that I'm traveling all over the place for the holidays over like a month or 2 period, so it's going to kind of stick to the 1 video a week here. You'll still see my normal car reviews and some other videos, but just a little bit of a delay on some of the bigger stuff. So again, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one.